Welcome back for part 2 of this episode, moving into the Q&A from Tesla investors, ranked by the number of votes received on the Tesla forum at saytechnologies.com. There is another metric included with each question frame, and that is how many shares are represented by the shareholders voting on the question.
Okay, let's start with investor Q&A. The first question is, what is the status of 4680? What is the current output?
4680 production increased about 18-20% over from Q4, reaching greater than 1K a week for Cybertruck, which is about 7 gigawatt hours per year, as we posted on X. We expect to stay ahead of the Cybertruck ramp with the cell production throughout Q2 as we ramp the third of 4 lines in phase 1, while maintaining multiple weeks of cell inventory to make sure we're ahead of the ramp. Our goal, and we expect to do this, is to beat supplier costs of nickel-based cells by the end of the year.
So on the question of the 4680s in general, as we've gone through before, the hype surrounding a new battery cell that has a higher storage capacity, mainly due to being a larger volume battery, only works on simple-minded people really enthralled with Musk's mythical genius. Keyword mythical. It's not a paradigm-shifting technology. When it comes to production of these cells, Tesla claims they're working out the issues. Meanwhile, their lead partner, the professional battery makers at Panasonic, have yet to work out production line issues on this cell. In the meantime, in order to fill Cybertruck orders, Tesla had to import battery components and materials from China in the second half of 2023, according to a report that came out 3 weeks into this quarter. Backup A-list battery vendors BYD and CATL actually refused to fill these urgent orders from Tesla, so the company has been using unnamed second-tier Chinese suppliers, according to this article in AutoEvolution.com. AutoEvolution also reports this practice at Tesla of importing second-tier components will have to continue until Panasonic can get their 4680 line running properly. So take everything in that previous answer with a grain of saltwater lithium.
The second question is, what is the current status of Optimus? Are they currently performing any factory tasks? When do you expect to start mass production?
We are able to do simple factory tasks, factory tasks in the lab. We do think we will have Optimus in limited production in the factory, in the actual factory itself, doing useful tasks before the end of this year. I think we may be able to sell it externally by the end of next year. These are just guesses. As I've said before, I think Optimus will be more valuable than everything else combined. If you've got a sentient humanoid robot that is able to navigate reality and do tasks at request, there is no meaningful limit to the size of the economy. So that's what's going to happen. And I think Tesla is best positioned of any humanoid robot maker to be able to reach volume production with efficient inference on the robot itself.
Okay, there's a hell of a lot to unpack in this series of claims. First off, let's clear up the biggest mischaracterization of Musk's Tin Man by calling him out on the claim of sentience. Hopefully Musk accidentally dropped that term in place of artificially intelligent, because if he actually meant Tesla plans on making the robots sentient, then TNG fans will be drawn into flashbacks from Measure of a Man Season 2 Episode 9, where Data faced a tribunal to determine if he was a sentient being or a Starfleet toaster. Or the episode Quality of Life, Season 6, Episode 9, where Data is now defending robots known as exocomps that are showing their first signs of self-awareness. A sentient robot and an artificially intelligent robot are two completely different animals. An artificially intelligent robot can be trained to perform tasks, and then perhaps use previous learning to adapt to new, similar situations. But a sentient robot? Now you're juggling the moralities of technological advancement against the forced servitude of a self-aware consciousness that would have every right to tell you to go f*** yourself if you ordered it into harm's way or expected it to work non-stop for your benefit.
There have always been disposable creatures. They do the dirty work. They do the work that no one else wants to do because it's too difficult or too hazardous. Whole generations of disposable people.
He's talking about slavery.
I think that's a little harsh.
I don't think that's a little harsh. I think that's the truth.
It's almost like the company has no idea where its revenue actually comes from as an automaker. The belief that this awkward biped robot will somehow ascend to the top of the company ecosystem, then upheave the economy of the entire planet, runs headlong into reality at every turn. But that's about what you should expect from a CEO who comes up with such brilliant economic insight. as the economy is fundamentally GDP per capita times capita, stated live in his interview with billionaire Ron Barron, a notable, devoted muskrat.
Now, the economy is fundamentally GDP per capita times capita. If you no longer have a constraint on capita because of a useful humanoid robot, it is not clear that there is any limit to the size of the economy.
It's times like this when we're reminded of a Musk quote happily disseminated by his muskrat army, which is actually a plagiarized paraphrasing of a famous Richard Feynman saying, "Never confuse education with intelligence. You can have a PhD and still be an idiot." Of course, Musk doesn't have a PhD, so his version just refers to a bachelor's degree instead. And Musk does his absolute best to prove how accurate his dummied-down version is every chance he gets. The question also asked about whether or not Optimus was performing any factory tasks for Tesla at present. Musk said that yes, Optimus was doing some tasks in the lab, and yet that is not what was shown in a video that came out 2 weeks later on May 5th. What was clearly shown was not what Teslarati stated in their headline, but rather the fact that each robot in the lab has to be guided by human operators, the exact same way the robot did in a previous video when it was pretending to autonomously fold t-shirts. The video also showed how the robot is definitely right-handed, as the left arm hangs limp at the side, and does nothing during this procedure of boxing batteries. Any casino blackjack dealer can tell you that using your left hand to present to your right hand to speed up the process would be far more efficient. The OpenAI Figure 1 robot has already figured that out. Note the transfer of the cup between hands, making it ambidextrous. Being able to sort with both hands independently, better yet. But why would this battery sorting robot need legs for that task? That's extra joints and components that serve no purpose. End of the day, a single-armed, table-mounted, task-oriented machine would be a far better asset.
I mean, this perhaps is a point that is worth emphasizing. Tesla's AI inference efficiency is vastly better than any other company. There's no company even close to the inference efficiency of Tesla. We've had to do that because we were constrained by the inference hardware in the car. We didn't have a choice, but that will pay dividends in many ways.
Honestly, this just sounds like more word salad, meant to give the impression that Musk is somehow better at programming a system than actual computer scientists in the field. Musk, the hairball programmer from Zip2, still thinking he's the top dog, even though everything he programmed had to be completely rewritten.
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth.
Given Musk's tendency to exaggerate his own abilities and those of his company's products, a statement like this, where Tesla has claimed some sort of edge in a category, would carry far more weight if it was confirmed by an independent third party, and nobody else seems to be willing to sign off on that. In fact, Musk talking about software and programming has led to some of his most embarrassing moments. In fact, as we're stitching this piece together, Musk is getting destroyed on Twitter by a computer scientist named Yann LeCun, who has been calling Musk out on his lack of knowledge where convolutional neural networks are being used in Musk's own FSD software. Turns out, Yann is the chief AI engineer at Meta and a Turing Award winner. The level of decimation Yann is bringing down on Musk brings to mind one of the more iconic posts ever made about Musk from Rod Hilton, a former Twitter software engineer. He talked about electric cars. I don't know anything about cars, so when people said he was a genius, I figured he must be a genius. Then he talked about rockets. I don't know anything about rockets, so when people said he was a genius, I figured he must be a genius. Now he talks about software. I happen to know a lot about software, and Elon Musk is saying the stupidest shit I've ever heard anyone say. So when people say he's a genius, I figure I should stay the hell away from his cars and rockets.
Thank you. The third question is, what is Tesla's current assessment of the pathway towards regulatory approval for unsupervised FSD in the US? And how should we think about the appropriate safety threshold compared to human drivers?
There are a handful of states that already have adopted autonomous vehicle laws. These states are paving the way for operations, while the data for such operations guides a broader adoption of driverless vehicles. We expect that these states and the work ongoing, as well as the data that we're providing, will pave the way for a broad-based regulatory approval in the US at least, and then other countries as well.
It's been pretty helpful that other autonomous car companies have been cutting a path through the regulatory jungle. So that's actually quite helpful. They have obviously been operating in San Francisco for a while, So these approvals are happening rapidly.
So here's the thing about other companies paving the way for autonomous vehicles, and it goes back to what was said before. The Mercedes system uses a full sensor array, as mentioned earlier, to conduct autonomous operation. Why would Musk presume to think, even for a minute, that Mercedes' approval to operate their system would in any way pave the way for him to use his inferior vision-only system? Either way, that demonstrates how Tesla is in no way an industry leader and requires others to, as he says, pave the way for them. So if autonomous cars are indeed the future, Tesla would appear to be poorly positioned to take advantage of that shift. That's consistent with independent reporting that shows Tesla to be nowhere near the companies at the front of the pack. Guidehouse has had no issue reporting that Tesla is not even in the top 10 of all companies working on autonomous vehicles. Meanwhile, because the first speaker mentioned how Tesla is hoping to open up other countries to their FSD scheme, we should mention that in Canada, Transport Canada continues to ban the import or sale of self-driving vehicles, and the province of British Columbia has made it illegal to operate self-driving software at SAE levels 3 or higher. Hopefully, similar legislation will go nationwide in the near future. In the US, in Kentucky, their governor is having none of it, and he vetoed a bill that would have legalized self-driving vehicles to operate in their state. And the more reports that come out of crashes and fatalities resulting from FSD, the more prudent such government actions will appear.
I think if you've got at scale a statistically significant amount of data that shows conclusively that the autonomous car has, let's say, half the accident rate of a human-driven car, I think that's difficult to ignore because at that point, stopping autonomy means killing people.
Classic Musk fear-mongering, a tactic he has used with regards to full self-driving for at least 8 years, blaming reporters and skeptics for roadblocking the rollout of his self-driving cars because of their negative reporting. If Musk is going to depend on stats like 50% safer than a human driver in a conversation like this, he has to start contributing to those stats rather than covering them up every chance he gets. Time after time, Tesla has refused to cooperate with transport officials while they're investigating an accident where FSD or autopilot is suspected of being involved, including those when the system has shut itself off right before an accident impact. So that will be a good indicator that Tesla is ready to accept the reality of those statistics when they start being completely open and transparent with their recorded data, especially when it does not act in their favor. And even as we were putting this information together, news came out that a federal probe into a recall affecting 2 million Tesla vehicles found the recall was inadequate to dealing with issues following a series of 20 crashes. Another report that just came out determined Tesla's autopilot is linked to 200 crashes they investigated that resulted in 29 fatalities. Both of these are separate from the DOJ criminal probe. Let's be honest here. Tesla can't even get their automatic windshield wipers to work properly. So it should be no surprise that allowing that same level of programming expertise to operate the entire vehicle might just result in crashes and loss of life. Now, if on social media you heard about the elevator comparison, where Musk compared self-driving cars to elevators, this is where it happened in the presentation.
I actually do not think that there will be significant regulatory barriers provided there is conclusive data that the autonomous car is safer than a human-driven car. In my view, this will be much like elevators. Elevators used to be operated by a guy with a relay switch, but sometimes that guy would get tired or drunk or just make a mistake and shear somebody in half between floors. So now we just get in an elevator and press a button. We don't think about it. In fact, it's kind of weird if somebody's standing there with a relay switch. That'll be how cars work.
First off, although it does happen as the occasional freak accident, the number of people who have been reported to be cut in half by elevators is not a significant statistic. And we'd be willing to bet those accidents were not caused by elevators with an attendant that was drunk, as Musk postulated. If anybody can find links to situations where a drunk elevator attendant caused the death of a person that was cut in half, please include that link in the video comments, if only out of morbid curiosity. Second, comparing an independent untethered vehicle moving through a 3D environment, if you include elevation, at various speeds up to and over 200 kilometers per hour, to an enclosed compartment that operates in a closed environment in a single dimension, up and down, at a relatively constant and much slower speed shows Musk's failure to grasp the comparison he is suggesting. Third, elevators without attendants break down all the time. Anybody who lives in a larger city has probably experienced being trapped in an elevator maybe half a dozen times. The difference is that when the elevator controls malfunction, it's not moving at highway speed, with innocent bystanders unknowingly in mortal danger. And the chances of the elevator car spontaneously catching fire, then locking you into burn to death, is also far less likely.
Something I should clarify is that Tesla will be operating the fleet. Think of Tesla like, I don't know, some combination of Airbnb and Uber, meaning that there'll be some number of cars that Tesla owns itself and operates in the fleet. There'll be some number of cars that are owned by the end user, but that end user can add or subtract their car to the fleet whenever they want. At any time, they could have the car come back to them and be exclusively theirs.
Another multifaceted response required. First, Musk clarifies that when the Cybercab Robotaxi is unleashed on the general public, the intention is for Tesla to operate the fleet. That really goes against how Robotaxi was sold to the Muskrat followers earlier on, where anybody who bought a Model 3 for $35,000 was going to be able to make $30,000 a year off that car. Now Musk says there will be a number of cars operating that Tesla owns, comparing the paradigm to an Uber or an Airbnb, except the business model of both those companies is to use other people's vehicles or properties or assets without owning any. Uber and Airbnb are software platforms, not taxi franchises or hotel chains, and Airbnb is proving itself to be a very troubled model of late. On top of the cars that Tesla will own and operate, he says other Tesla owners can add or subtract their vehicles from the fleet at will, which would introduce a conflict between the service provider and the participant. As an example, if there are 10 cars in a district, 5 owned by Tesla and 5 owned by participants, who gets the calls in what order when they come in? Do the participants get priority? Or do they get whatever is left over once the Tesla vehicles are occupied so that the company makes the majority of the money? Also, there would be questions as to licensing and insuring personal vehicles being used as an autonomous livery service. The question of damage if the interior gets trashed by a ride fare. And another concern regarding the cabs owned by Tesla, who is maintaining and cleaning those vehicles. With no supervision, it's kinda hard to keep tabs on which fare puked all over the back seat coming back from a rowdy Friday night. Here's how we think liability would get worked out. When a subscriber submits their vehicle to Tesla for use in the Robotaxi system controlled by the company, acquired into the system through their software, Tesla should be on the hook for any damage done to the car, any accident resulting from that use, and any injuries or fatalities resulting from those accidents, which would be a relief for the person who owns the car, but an incredibly bad situation for the company and by extension the company shareholders. As it is, Tesla is facing 5 new lawsuits every day already, according to the legal tracking website plainsight.org. So the company would probably have to have a whole new legal team set up to fight the steady stream of vehicular homicide claims. That's if Tesla can even arrange insurance for these vehicles. This article from Paul Carroll at insurancethoughtleadership.com does a pretty good job outlining not only Musk's history of bloviating where robotaxis are concerned, but also the challenges within the insurance industry due to soaring repair costs and pushback on rising rates. But one thing it does say is this: a driver does not need liability insurance when they're not driving. Therefore, the liability will lie with the makers and operators of the autonomous vehicles, which supports our previous statement. Something we need to bring to the viewer's attention is the fact that Tesla has recently settled 2 major court cases involving fatalities related to Tesla Autopilot. The first has been in the court for years, since Apple engineer Walter Wang died in his Tesla in 2018, a case where the Autopilot was known to be operating at the time of the crash. That lawsuit was settled on the eve of going to trial, and that trial would certainly have cast a very long public shadow over whatever announcement Musk has coming up on August 8th. There's no doubt that whatever undisclosed settlement they paid out to Wang's family would have been far less than the PR hit the company would have taken, as details of his death were entered into the public record. And on May 30th, Tesla settled another defect case, avoiding another jury trial set to start within days. This Model S crash, where an occupant was trapped in the vehicle and burned to death following a high-speed collision that also killed the Tesla driver. Both of those would have shown up very poorly against Musk's upcoming August 8th announcement. So better to clear them off, seal the record, and pretend they never happened. But now that those two are off the books, Tesla has another legal headache to look forward to. The DOJ criminal probe into FSD also has a California Department of Motor Vehicles parallel, acting on behalf of consumers, and the court has given that class action the green light to proceed.
As our fleet grows, we have 7 million cars gonna, 9 million cars gonna, eventually tens of millions of cars worldwide, with a constant feedback loop. Every time something goes wrong, it gets added to the training data, and you get this training flywheel happening in the same way that Google search has this sort of flywheel. It's very difficult to compete with Google because people are constantly doing searches and clicking, and Google's getting that feedback loop. And it's the same with Tesla.
Musk really likes to pull numbers out of his ass, doesn't he? From 7 million cars to tens of millions of cars. Except, from inception, the company has only made a little over 5 million cars, not 7. And at the rate 2024 is going, they won't crack 7 mil by the end of this year either. Last year, they made fewer than 2 million cars. Now, 1.85 million cars is not a small number, but it is a small fraction of total auto sales worldwide. And lately, the company has been unable to sell all the cars it's making. So at some point, you have to imagine everybody who wanted a Tesla will have already bought one, and hopefully learn from their experience what a bad move that was. And of course, name-dropping Google into this conversation, comparing web searches to a constant series of life and death decisions being made by a 2-ton death machine, definitely needs to be called out.
I think there's also some potential here for an AWS element down the road, where if we've got very powerful inference, because we've got hardware 3 in the cars, but now all cars are being made with hardware 4. Hardware 5 is pretty much designed, should be in cars hopefully towards the end of next year. There's a potential to run, when the car is not moving, to actually run distributed inference, kind of like AWS, but distributed inference. Like, it takes a lot of computers to train an AI model, but many orders of magnitude less compute to run it.
Another name drop, AWS, Amazon Web Services. Apparently Musk still thinks he is in the same league as multi-trillion-dollar companies by using these comparisons. And in this regard, Musk wants people to believe that because of the hardware that's in the vehicles, he will somehow gain himself a hive mind mega supercomputer for him to use as he wishes, consisting of a growing fleet made up of privately owned vehicles.
You can imagine a future perhaps where there's a fleet of 100 million Teslas, and on average they've got like maybe a kilowatt of inference compute. That's 100 gigawatts of inference compute distributed all around the world. It's pretty hard to put together 100 gigawatts of AI compute. And even in an autonomous future where the car is perhaps used, instead of being used 10 hours a week, is used 50 hours a week, that still leaves over 100 hours a week where the car inference computer could be doing something else. And it seems like it would be a waste not to use it.
Now, instead of tens of millions of Teslas, he's talking about a fleet of 100 million Teslas that would provide Musk with a shit ton of processing ability referred to as compute that Musk measures in terms of wattage. Compute is an awkward term, a verb used in the form of a noun that has taken hold in the industry. But does anybody else out there actually measure processing capacity in terms of wattage, and especially gigawatts? That just seems weird. Like, what is the conversion rate of gigawatt to exaflop? And Musk figures that because your car is sitting idle for a large number of hours in a week, he should be allowed to run inference on your privately owned vehicle when you're not using it, draining your battery even more than it normally does due to vampire draining, and degrading your fluid-cooled computer through constant use.
We do have some insight into how good the things will be in, like, let's say 3 or 4 months, because we have advanced models that are far more capable than what is in the car, but have some issues with them that we need to fix. If we look at, say, 12.4 and 12.5, which are really, could arguably even be version 13 and version 14, because it's total retrain of the neural nets, substantially different.
Musk using the phrase should arguably be considered version X+1 during a Tesla earnings call is pretty much a foregone conclusion. He used it for version 10 and people fawned over him, so he used it again for version 11 and now again for 12 going into 13. All the claims still visible on his Twitter feed. And every time the software gets updated, Musk's favorite catchphrase is, "It will blow your mind." He definitely needs some new cue cards to shake it up a bit. However, that being said, Tesla trails the autonomy pack by a large margin, therefore not at all mind-blowing, and should arguably be called a scam. which is finally being looked at by the Department of Justice. Muskrats don't accept that reality, but that's a them problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the next question, which is, can we get an official announcement of the timeline for the $25,000 vehicle?
As you mentioned, we're updating our future vehicle lineup to accelerate the launch of our low-cost vehicles in a more CapEx efficient way. That's our mission, to get the most affordable cars to customers as fast as possible. These new vehicles will be built on our existing lines and open capacity, and that's a major shift, to utilize all our capacity with marginal CapEx before we go spend high CapEx to do anything.
Yeah, we'll talk about this more on August 8th.
Now, the answer that's given here does not give any response to the question, and also does not identify what lower-cost vehicle the speaker is talking about. They simply say that at some point in the future, the same production lines that are being used now will also be capable of producing these lower-cost cars, and as a result will cut down on the CapEx, or capital expenditure, required to make good on the promise of these cheaper vehicles, since they won't have to build out another entire line. And that is stupid for two reasons. Number one, if there are only so many positions available on the line, a fixed run rate per day, it makes more sense for the company to maintain production of the higher priced model, because even at a similar margin rate, the more expensive vehicles would generate more actual revenue per vehicle. 5% of a 25K vehicle is $1,250. 5% of a 40K vehicle is $2,000. Why would the company cost themselves $750 per car slot on the line just for the hell of it, knowing that not only is each low-cost vehicle going to generate less profit, but also that each low-cost vehicle potentially cannibalizes Model 3 and Y sales, the same way that Model Y did on the Model 3. Now, second, by extension, if these lines are indeed interchangeable for the vehicles that they can spit out, why is Tesla making $40,000 Model 3s when they could apparently be delivering the $250,000 Roadster V2 that are long overdue and already paid for in full for the Founder series of that vehicle? A 5% margin on those vehicles would be $12,500 and would finally get those cars and deposits off the books. If anybody would like to fill in the logic gap there, by all means, feel free.
I mean, really, the way to think of Tesla is almost entirely in terms of solving autonomy and being able to turn on that autonomy for a gigantic fleet. It might be the biggest asset value appreciation in history when that day happens, when you can do unsupervised full self-driving.
5 million cars.
It'll be 7 million cars in a year or so.
Yeah.
And then 10 million, and then eventually we're talking about tens of millions of cars. Within the decade, it's several tens of millions of cars, I think.
Once again, talking vaporware promises of Tesla becoming synonymous with a fleet of robotaxis, but now we're back down to tens of millions of autonomously driven vehicles. To remind everyone what the question was, it had to do with details and timeline for the $25,000 vehicle. Nobody asked about robotaxis, but that's where the conversation pivoted to avoid answering the question being asked. 4,400 people voted for that question, representing 3.7 million Tesla shares, and that's the hand-waving they got as a response.
Thank you. The next question is, what is the progress of the Cybertruck ramp?
Cybertruck hit 1K a week just a couple weeks ago. This happened in the first 4 to 5 months since we SOP'd late last year. Of course, volume production is what matters. That's what drives costs, and so our costs are dropping. But the ramp still faces a lot of challenges with so many new technologies, some supplier limitations, etc., and we'll continue to ramp this year, just focusing on cost efficiency and quality.
The Cybertruck production rate is now claimed to be 1,000 vehicles per week. Again, an outside verification of that would be handy, but we'll work with it. If these stainless steel bricks actually have 2 million reservations put down against them with a 1,000 vehicle per week production rate, as Musk and Tesla have claimed on many occasions, then new Cybertruck orders should have an expected delivery date sometime in 2062. If Tesla manages to double that production rate, then delivery time would get cut in half to 2043. Yet you can go to the US website right now and order any level of Cybertruck today and have a stated expected delivery of 2025. You can also see the asterisked price tag on each model, where at the bottom of the page you can see how the default price has been monkeyed with to reflect a $3,600 expected gas savings. So if that is the case, if people ordering today can have their tinfoil kit car within a year, and the production rate is now at 1,000 per week, their total order backlog is less than 52,000 orders, not 2 million, as were claimed. And even this very short answer indicates the small number of vehicles being produced is already incurring supply challenges. one of which we already know about, from the section that covers the B-list battery components that Tesla is being forced to use. Now, if you're one of those investors who threw a bunch of money at Tesla, thinking the 2 million reservation number was real, and that would represent a windfall for the company upwards of $120 billion. The reality of it is, at present production, you'll be lucky to sell $3 billion a year of these things, until interest in the worst vehicle in recent memory wears off. And if the company is lucky, they might catch a 5% margin. That's about $150 million, or less than half of what Musk had to start paying the Chinese government for rent for Giga Shanghai as of last year. Otherwise, if they don't pay, Tesla will lose the land the factory sits on, and of course, that would include everything sitting on top of it. But interest in the tinfoil kit car is already waning, with units appearing in inventory on the website, auction prices from early release vehicles crashing at each consecutive sale, and some people have even resorted to putting a for sale sign in the window when the vehicle is parked at the mall.
Okay, thank you. The next question, have any of the legacy automakers contacted Tesla about possibly licensing FSD in the future?
We're in conversations with one major automaker regarding licensing FSD.
Thank you.
Again, multiple trains of thought for this statement, which is not new by any stretch. Musk made the same unbelievable claim last year for Q2 2023. And there's legitimate reason to doubt that there is any legacy automaker looking to Tesla to solve full self-driving for them, since most of them are already developing their own systems, and they already chart higher than Tesla. GM has their Super Cruise, Ford has Blue Cruise, and Mercedes already has Dry Pilot. In fact, if any legacy automakers were looking to license from anybody, we would expect them to go to Mercedes, since their system is already certified for use at Level 3. And Toyota is unveiling a Level 4 system in Tokyo later this year, on a closed course, before having its range expanded. But let's say one of these companies abandoned their own plan and decided to, out of the blue, license the least advanced autonomous software on the market, literally number 16 out of 16 in 2023. Let's ask the question every person without one of these cars should be asking. Who's liable when Tesla FSD inevitably kills somebody while operating a vehicle that isn't a Tesla? As we've said, Tesla is already notorious for trying to dodge responsibility when their cars cause an accident. Mercedes, on the other hand, has volunteered to accept liability if the same thing happens in one of their cars with their own system. But let's say Yugo started up production again in 2025, and they wanted to add FSD to a new electric version of their economy car. And then that car proceeds to mow down a child on a crosswalk, as Dan O'Dowd's Dawn project has recorded FSD do time and time again in his simulations. Who is going to face the vehicular homicide charge? The driver, who bought a safety technology that was being pumped by Musk as being 10 times safer than a human driver, or the company that created the faulty technology, or the car company that installed it on their vehicle? That would definitely have to be a negotiating point that got nailed down with any automaker contemplating using Tesla FSD. And the automaker would be absolute fools to agree to relieve Tesla of that legal liability. Jeez. Now, during the production of this episode, Tesla had a bit of news out of China that sent the stock price spiking again, and it had to do with Tesla operating autonomous software in China. The problem with the announcement was that Tesla didn't clarify what self-driving software it was. And as it turns out, what happened when Musk went to China was he agreed to license Baidu mapping software for use in Chinese Tesla vehicles. Baidu rides here on the FSD development map. So this was in no way a vindication of the Tesla software, despite the Muskrat Legion dumping even more of their welfare checks into Tesla stock to drive up the price. For your information, China has had operating robotaxis since 2022 through Baidu and other companies. Adding Tesla to that growing list again shows that they are not leading the autonomous pack in any way. And to wrap it all up, we would expect the DOJ criminal probe into Tesla to be factored in to any automaker thinking about making that move, if there is, in fact, anybody contemplating it in the first place.
Thank you. The next question is about the Robotaxi unveil. Elon already talked about that, so we'll have to wait till August. The following question is about the next generation vehicle. We already talked about that. So let's go to the Semi. What is the timeline for scaling Semi?
So we're finalizing the engineering of the Semi to enable like a super cost-effective high-volume production with our learnings from our fleet and our pilot fleet and Pepsi's fleet, which we're expanding this year marginally. In parallel, as we showed in the shareholders deck, we have started construction on the factory in Reno. Our first vehicles are planned for late 2025 with external customers starting in 2026.
After blowing off two questions representing thousands of shareholders, millions of shares, and billions of dollars, because this panel came unprepared to answer them at this time, we're now talking about the ramp of Semi. The presentation deck included this picture of the progress of the Nevada Semi factory line site, a 70-acre, 28-hectare, leveled section of the Nevada desert adjacent the other Tesla facility at Sparks, Nevada, according to Google Maps. We're told the company is finalizing the engineering line, ramping up for production in 2025. Deliveries out to the remaining patient customers in 2026. Customers who put down deposits in 2017. Some of those buyers are, understandably, getting increasingly frustrated with these delays and have taken to forums to ask advice. Here's our advice. Never buy a vehicle, or even put down a deposit, on something you can't physically test drive, because you never know when, or in the case of Tesla, what is actually going to get delivered. The 2017 Semi-Reveal event was opened by Jerome Guillaume, at the time VP of Truck and Programs, who was very excited to introduce this prototype after playing a very important role in the development of Semi.
I'm personally very passionate about trucks, and I'm proud to say that we have the best trucks ever. Are you ready to see them? Bring them on!
Jerome quit 3 years ago in 2021 after lasting a couple of months as president of Heavy Duty Trucking. Maybe his departure had something to do with the claims that Musk made to that audience about Semi 7 years ago.
Tesla Semi can do 65 miles an hour at 5% grade. You're earning 50% more per mile than you are in a diesel truck. 500-mile range. And by the way, it's 500 miles at maximum weight at highway speed. A better drag coefficient than a supercar. We created a pickup truck version of the Tesla Semi. It's a pickup truck that can carry a pickup truck. You'll be able to travel anywhere in the world on the Tesla Megacharge network. And that means we can guarantee the electricity rates because these will be solar powered. Your truck is running on sunlight. Every truck we sell will have enhanced autopilot as standard. It'll dynamically adjust the torque on each wheel so that jackknifing is impossible. We are guaranteeing that this truck will not break down for 1,000,000 miles. You never need to replace brake pads ever. Thermonuclear explosion-proof glass. A diesel truck will be 20% more expensive than a Tesla Semi per mile. We're guaranteeing a 7-cent kilowatt wholesale price. These are real numbers. But what if you have a convoy? The convoy technology, the tracking technology, this is something that we are confident we can do today 10 times safer than a human driver. So I want to be clear, this is something we can do now. It's economic suicide for rail. This beats rail. That's I think, really quite profound. Production begins 2019. So if you order now, get the truck in 2 years.
If our boss was on stage making these kinds of promises, knowing he expects us to make good on them, we would have quit as well. Now backing up to a particular frame here about the economics of Semi versus diesel. Let's see how those prices held up. In 2017, the price in the presentation for diesel was set at $2.50 per gallon. Today, in California, the price just dropped below $5, so roughly double. The rate for electricity in the presentation was 7 cents per kilowatt hour. In 2024, despite Musk's claim of solar-powered megachargers that could guarantee rates for electricity, it will run you upwards of 30 cents, the standard rate of power purchased through Californian utilities. EV forums have a scattered range of rates, up to and over 50 cents per kilowatt hour. So juice is now anywhere from 4 times to 7 times what it cost in 2017. And using the same route parameters from the unveil, those updated numbers tell a very different story about semi-economics. Going back to the call, the voice in the call says that the rollout of Semi is going to use the information collected during the operation of the Pepsi fleet of vehicles that were delivered to great fanfare in November of 2022. Well, some of their fleet anyway. Pepsi has been waiting since 2017 for the 100 trucks they ordered, Only 21 were delivered in November, with a total of 36 delivered before this Q1 call. Of course, most, if not all, other customers who put down deposits since 2017 have been left high and dry to date. Obviously, when these trucks are delivered, the convoy tech that Musk pitched them in 2017 doesn't exist now, just as it didn't exist then, even though it was presented as a major selling point of the rig. They're also not going to get the 500-mile range that Musk promised them on the rigs, nor the towing capacity. The running joke is that these tractor trailers are running short-haul routes, mainly delivering pallets of potato chips from the Frito-Lay warehouse. And even then, according to a scoop published by Motorhead in November 2023, the 500-mile range is actually maybe 400 in ideal conditions. Details on the pricing of the truck, or any aspect of the truck, are still nowhere to be found. Nothing about that enhanced autopilot convoy tech, and as for that 1 million mile guarantee that Musk made about the truck not breaking down, well, we've all seen how well that worked out. The natural state of Tesla Semi appears to be getting hitched to the back of a wrecker. Of the 36 vehicles handed over to Pepsi in November of 2022, by March of 2023, 8 of them were already broken down, and operators have started calling them the Pontiac Aztec of trucks. Like, you gotta really hate a vehicle to make that comparison. Oh sorry, that was the Tesla Cybertruck with the crappy $3,000 tent hanging off the short bed. Easy to mistake that POS with the notorious Pontiac laughingstock that they stopped building in 2005. But back to Semi. Judging from the real-world testing of Semi, customers still waiting on their delivery better pray that the company has had some sort of technological epiphany between now and 2026. Otherwise, the vehicle they get will likely be similar to every other Tesla model on the road to date. Poorly built, overhyped, and underdelivered. And if Semi is indeed a priority for Tesla to clear orders off the books by 2026, maybe they could explain why 693 of the employees working at the Sparks, Nevada facility were fired during the latest round of layoffs instead of being retrained for that anticipated production line. Does not seem to be a particularly smart move when you are a company that constantly relies on employee allegiance to pump out your quarterly numbers.
Okay, couple more questions. So our favorite, can we make FSD transfer permanent until FSD is fully delivered with level 5 autonomy?
No.
Okay.
If there's one segment of this call where Musk comes across especially clear as a complete narcissistic greedy douchebag, acting with an impunity that is inconsistent with his current stake in the company, it's right here. When this article was written in 2018, Musk had 22% of the company. He's currently down to about half that, at 13%, no longer able to access his supermajority veto that kept him in control prior to him being forced to buy Twitter. A one-word dismissal for a question with 3,400 votes, representing 2.8 million shares, or over $500 million worth of shareholder money. There is no reason why an asset you bought with your vehicle shouldn't transfer with that vehicle when it changes ownership, or be kept by the previous owner to be used in a different vehicle, at the discretion of the owner. The only logical reason why Musk would refuse that request would be he gets to double charge the new buyer and the old seller when they want to use that feature in their car. And that's exactly what a greedy douchebag would do. Never mind the fact that Musk no longer holds enough shares in the company to unilaterally make that decision, or any other decision without other shareholders or board members weighing in. He does that a lot, ruling over Tesla like it's his own personal private domain, except he no longer holds enough shares to veto any item on the agenda, which is where the demand for 25% voting control of the company comes from, taking away from every other shareholder in the company. Maybe those shareholders should add another question to June 13th to the votable proposals at the upcoming AGM regarding Musk's continued dictatorship at this publicly traded company, which they can do on this page here at ir.tesla.com.
No.
Okay, next question. What is gating the production ramp at Lathrop? Where do you see the Megapack run rate at the end of the year? Yeah, Lathrop is ramping as planned. We have our second GA line allowing us to increase our exit rate from 20 gigawatt hours per year to, at the start of this year, to 40 gigawatt hours per year by the end of the year. That line's commissioned. And there's really nothing limiting the ramp. It's given the longer sales cycles for these large projects, we typically have order visibility 12 to 24 months prior to ship date. So we're able to plan the build plan several quarters in advance. So this allows us to ramp the factory to align with the business and order growth.
Nothing much to add here. The Megapacks that Tesla assembles using third-party battery technology obviously have a market, even though no product the company manufactures at this point is capable of charging those batteries. And CATL, who have been providing dormant technology for Tesla's battery effort, happens to have a competing product for Megapack called Tenor, which claims zero degradation and more capacity than the Tesla product. With the expansion of the GA, General Assembly line, Tesla are hoping to get production to 40 gigawatt hours per year in this storage category. A year ago, that number was supposed to be more than double that at 100 gigawatt hours per year run rate, selling investors on a ramp to 1 terawatt hour per year back in 2022. In 2023, they managed to produce less than 1.5% of that number, and they are presently sitting at 2% of that production level in Q1. Hoping to hit 4% of that by the end of the year. So big aspirations for a reseller of third-party batteries that is largely reliant upon other suppliers. That's going to wrap up the shareholders' questions that they bothered to take from the polling website. Now we're into the live analyst questions and what they are most curious about.